Well, thank you guys all so much for being here today. I think this is a really important topic. I try to produce these week to week, the best made weddings, and try to figure out what's going on. And I just had one of our good friends got married last weekend, and I filmed it. And it really got me thinking about this whole idea of, I think a lot of people are doing the split, doing the smaller ceremony this year, a micro wedding, elopement, whatever you want to call it. And then they're going to come back next year and do a reception. And I don't know what that looks like. And I don't know if they necessarily yet know what that looks like either. And so I want to figure out a way to successfully the title of this episode is, saving the 2021 wedding. And so if we are doing, a split this year for both sides, for the couple getting married and then also the guests that are attending, how can we make this be the most successful event, emotionally, for them feeling everything, for the guests, perspective, for kind of celebrating that day. And so we have a wedding officiant, a wedding planner, and a wedding DJ here to kind of round out that. Chanelle, go ahead and introduce yourself and we'll go around. Thank you guys all so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Reed. I'm delighted to be here. My name is Chanelle Carlin with Chanelle Carlin Weddings. I'm based in Okanagan, Washington. And I primarily officiate weddings for couples who are wanting to elope or have smaller, more intimate wedding ceremonies throughout the Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and in natural settings. So usually 95, 99% of my weddings are actually outdoors, and they go all year long. So, and I do have a number of couples who have decided that they want to get married this year in 2020. They had plans for bigger weddings. And while some couples postponed their bigger weddings altogether and are not getting married this year, some of them still wanted to go through with their initial wedding date, but save the bigger celebration with their family and their friends, their extended family and friends until next year. So.
Awesome. And Sara, go ahead. Thank you. I'm so glad we got to connect this week. We've never worked together yet, but I'm glad that this all worked out for you to come on. Why don't you introduce yourself?
I agree. Yeah. Thank you so much for including us, Reed. It's really fun to hop on here with you. I'm Sara Haverstraw. I work with It's Your Day Events. We're a Seattle-based company, but I am the North Sound lead planner. So I am actually up here in Bellingham, Washington. I've been with the company. 2020 is my 9th season, and we're coming up on 11 years in business. And a lot like Chanelle, we have had a few of our couples that do want to still do the 2020 wedding. The date's important to them, or mostly they're thinking like they want to postpone the wedding, but not postpone the marriage. And then we have had quite a few that will just shift everything entirely to 2021. But yeah, I think this is a great thing to be kind of talking about, and I'm excited to chat with you guys.
And Alan wanted me to ask him about his Mariners jersey as we came on the podcast today. Alan is sporting it's XFL Markcast Day here at Best Made Videos. This is when we post our XFL podcast. And Alan, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? I think this is podcast number 87 for you. I was trying to count it up.
I feel like it's 87 or 88. There's a lot on the cutting room floor, though, and I know the outtakes are going to be really in demand on the internet. I believe the theme of this is somewhat wait till next year, because that's what a lot of couples are doing. And I feel like I have a certain amount of expertise as a Mariner fan waiting until next year. So that is why I selected the attire that I did. Awesome. And I am Alan Chitlik with Puget Sound DJ.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Yes, and definitely as however long I've lived in Seattle, I share those sentiments. Does anyone else, am I totally off base here in having concerns, questions, things? Do you share that? Do you think I'm crazy? Alan, just because I've talked with you the most about this, let's go back around that way. Am I totally off base in having concerns about things for next year?
I think it's different. And I think you are right to be concerned. I think couples and the wedding vendor team that people are working with need to recognize that if you're splitting things up and you're having your ceremony now and you're having your reception later, it is. I'm with you on that theory that it's going to be different. There's a synergy in a great ceremony and reception where it all kind of comes together. And if you hear a great ceremony and the couple is able to articulate why they're in love and why they're marrying each other, that's a great start to a celebration. And I think it helps guests get in the mindset of really supporting that couple, really loving them. And so I buy into your theory that it's different. If you're going to have a reception in 2021 without a ceremony, yes.
Sara, what about you?
I'm pretty much on the page with Alan. I totally agree that it's different. What I am going to push back with you on is that I do think people can keep the emotions strong. I agree that it's sort of like momentum gathering when you have the ceremony and then you roll right into the reception. But in my experience, it feels like a lot of these couples, at least for our team, are compromising with this year's ceremony. They're doing it, they're feeling it with their partner, and, they're saying all the marriage vows, the tears, they're still having like that moment with their partner, but they've downsized their wedding party. They've cut their guest list to like a 10th of who they planned on having. They're not having dancing. They're maybe not having any speeches. And so I do feel like it's super different. And there's a lot of like pivoting and reshuffling and planning and replanning and, all those sort of things. But essentially, I guess I'm just going to say it's not going to lack emotion for 2021, in my opinion.
I'm going to have to ask you to leave if you disagree with me.
Dude, I thought we were going to do great.
No, that's good. No, but that's good. And that's what I want to maintain today. So no, that's great. And Chanelle, what do you think about this? And then I'll have a follow-up question for you afterward.
So I can totally get the concern. I've had a number of conversations with couples over the same thing. They want to be married now. The whole point of setting a date and then looking forward to that date is to begin your life together as true partners, not just people who cohabitate, but as people who are 100% committed emotionally, physically, and legally. And they've planned all of that, and they planned, most of the time they've planned this big celebration with their family and friends. And like Sara said, they've then had to really dramatically change those plans, and it's been heartbreaking. So then they've tried their best to recapture these moments together, this intimacy. Maybe they've changed their plans completely. They've changed venues. They're getting married on a hiking trail, or they're getting married on a lake, but their family still can't be there to celebrate with them. So that's really what this is about for next year. And some of my couples are doing 2 ceremonies. So we're doing one that is just a very intimate, personal elopement ceremony. And then one next year when they can have their bigger celebration that really incorporates the family in a greater, more meaningful way.
Do you think, and this goes for everyone too, because there's been lots of talk of, we're just doing the reception next year, right? The reception next year. So do you guys think that a lot of couples that have done the smaller wedding this year, it is just going to be a dinner next year and dancing and toast? Or do you think that most of the couples are going to be doing some sort of vow renewal or, just redoing, but like for maybe they didn't do their own vows this year and then next year they'll do their own vows. What do you think, to put yourself in the mind of the planning couple, what do you think that they're thinking? Is it just a reception next year and that's it?
The couples that I'm working with, they're doing both. I have they're doing a ceremony now, and then they're doing a ceremony and a reception next year because their family members didn't get to participate in the ceremony. And we all know, while people may talk about, I have to go to another wedding, I just want to go for the party. Well, that is true for some people. Most people, when they go to a wedding, they want to see the couple get married. And if they can't see the legal piece, they still want to be part of that ceremonial piece, right? Most people don't see the legal, the license signing anyway. So they're not part of that legal piece as a general rule, but they are part of the ceremony. They love to watch the couple stand there and express their love to one another. And that can take place more than one time. It would just ideally look a little different.
Sara, the ones that you're doing, is it the same thing? Are they planning to do a whole ceremony again next year?
Not necessarily, no. What they've done, both of them that I worked with this year, they videoed the ceremony, which is obviously not as personal as like doing another full ceremony, but they've talked about sort of showing the ceremony and then having nobody see them before that sort of video plays, and then they can still make sort of like a grand entrance into the reception, so it does feel like a big sort of we're here moment where they're seeing their guests for the first time just after the video plays. And then the other one actually is doing sort of, so they did a micro wedding here in Bellingham, and they're kind of going to pivot and maybe do an East Coast wedding with family that's more over in like the Philadelphia area, and just kind of, yeah, reset over there. And since those people didn't travel at all, sort of do an East Coast and a West Coast thing.
Alan, I know we've kind of talked, and this sort of is similar to that kind of example that you said, where maybe someone got married in Hawaii and then, or abroad, or I mean, that's kind of the cliche, but, and then came back and did a reception. And I don't, I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think that a lot of times those are not as successful as maybe showing the video, having a recreation of the ceremony, than just like, hey, these people got married over here, and then we're going to come back and do a reception. Is that, have you done any of those? Have you heard with DJs and everybody how those kind of work out when you're not being mindful of the guests that maybe missed out on part of that stuff from before?
Sure. And as you know, my role on this podcast is to be the ray of sunshine. There is no doom and gloom from me. And I disagree with that theory. I feel like when a couple is starting to plan their 2021 event, they can start from scratch. It's different. And maybe, like Sara says, maybe they play a video. And that can be, if it's well done, that can be a nice emotional start to an entrance or something like that. Maybe they incorporate their previous ceremony some other way. Maybe they don't. Maybe they start with the idea of cocktail. Maybe they're not even dressed as though it was a wedding, and maybe they don't have any attendance. I think all of these options are still a starting point for what could be a very, very successful night. I mean, for me, part of the joy of a wedding is seeing all your people from all these different aspects of your life together under one roof, and feeling that community just really come together for you. And so you got to make a decision about how it's going to flow and what you want to do. There are some couples who don't care that much about the ceremony, right? Like, it's just a formality to get to the celebration. And for those couples, probably in 2021, they won't start with that. But I think there's other couples who do want to share that joy, like Chanelle was talking about before, with you can tell your spouse why you love them and why you're committing to them twice. You can do that in 20 and then do it again in 2021. And I think it really depends on the couple. But to your actual question, can it be successful? The answer from Alan is yes.
I worry, and this was years ago. And I love the idea of incorporating in the video, and obviously, as a videographer, I did a wedding years ago where they had like secretly went and got eloped by their friend or whatever, months before, didn't tell anybody. It told me during the booking meeting, oh, this will be such a great surprise. And it was not at all. And it really, because they did the whole wedding, right? They did the whole wedding, the mother's there, we're zipping up, we're doing everything. They come down the aisle and then, oh, wait. And then they pull down like a projector and they, and so that's where, and it was really bad. Like it was, it was as bad as, and so I'm not trying to, where you had brought the video, because I love the idea of doing that, but I'm saying that you really need to be careful about how that's done. And that was, obviously, these are different circumstances and people understand, COVID and rescheduling and stuff. But I I guess I just, we don't attend a lot of weddings, not working, my wife and I, and, we are always very cognizant about how just it feels as going as a guest, right? And feeling like to be a part of it and see everything. And so, especially if you're going to be traveling and paying for, registry gifts and all sorts of things, and then just feeling like you still, even though it wasn't the couple's fault, that maybe you missed out on part of it. So that's kind of my thoughts. Chanelle, if people are wanting to do another ceremony next year, how would you and how are you kind of working with the couples that you have to not only, obviously get married this year and have that be meaningful, but also, equally feel like they're going through that next year?
So one of the things that I'm asking couples to be aware of is exactly that guest experience. So their wedding day is all about them, right? And that's I always start with that premise. It's their wedding, and so I want to make sure that it feels good for them. When you're inviting guests to be there and to travel and to invest their time and their money to be part of that celebration, you want to be mindful of them and what their expectations are. As well. And we all know that most of the time when people go to a wedding, they're expecting to see a couple get married. And if they're already married, I agree. I can see where some people would feel like they had been kind of, wait, I got cheated out of that. But if you're being honest as a couple, as long as they're honest and open about what that is for them and what they want their guest experience to be, whether it's, joining in a celebration of love, or watching their marriage, it's I ask them always to be mindful of that. So that's where we start. So I have a couple coming up this month who are doing that, and so they're having their elopement because they planned for 2 years to get married on this particular date, and darn it, this date is important to them. So they are getting married, they're eloping, and they're getting married. And we created an elopement ceremony. So it's just them, their witnesses, and it's really about the two of them and actually just legally getting married, but having some ceremony to go with it so it feels memorable to them. But they really are both very family oriented, and they wanted their family to be able to celebrate with them. So when they get married next year, again, it's more of a vow renewal and a celebration. And thank you for honoring us with your presence and your love. And we really are so grateful that you can celebrate this with us because, we did come together, and yet now we can celebrate with you. And that's what we wanted to do in the first place. We weren't able to, but now we can. It's so it's being mindful of that.
I completely agree with Chanelle. And I would say my observation is when couples do their ceremony earlier and then have their reception later, if they're honest about it and open about it, there really isn't a problem. And I think in your example, part of the reaction of those guests being so negative was that they potentially felt deceived.
I agree.
Right? And I have talked to numerous couples who have done their ceremony in advance for a variety of reasons, health insurance, immigration, whatever. And they can't always remember who they've told and who they haven't. And that's a lot of pressure. But I feel like in 2021, every guest will excuse any couple for having done their ceremony in advance. I don't think you start with the presumption that I'm getting to see the unique actual first time ceremony. So I just think part of the key of it is to figure out something to do that feels like a ceremony that allows the couple to express their feelings for each other, or skip it. I think that's going to be a legitimate strategy too.
Just not just going right into reception.
Yeah.
Sara, and obviously it's a little far out, to be fully planning these 2021 weddings. But what are some questions and things you're going to be talking to your couples about that you want, for them to be mindful of, or that you want to know in trying to capture that same stuff for next year?
I think it kind of goes back to what Chanelle was saying about the guest experience. I think a lot of people that are attending any weddings, even if they're tiny this year, COVID's kind of like the elephant in the room, that people don't know how to act, and they don't know if they're wearing masks or if they're not wearing masks, or if they should stay for just a little time and not talk to anybody. And, it's just a lot of, I guess I feel like there's a lot of tension at weddings right now. Just kind of circling around the uncertainty of them. So I think I'll probably be talking with my guests about, obviously it's going to depend on if COVID is still as like prominent and for these 2021 weddings. But I kind of want to just talk about that and see how people are communicating with their guests about what sort of their goals and standards are going to be, and if they want to keep, like sanitation stations set up at their weddings. A lot of people this year are like, I don't want any COVID at my wedding, but you obviously really can't avoid it. So I think it's more just being mindful of the guest's comfort level, since it is sort of in the back of everybody's mind.
Alan, what are some things couples could be doing this year? And I know obviously we're getting to the end of this, Seattle, whatever wedding season we've had this year, what didn't really have, but like I know that recording the audio from the ceremony, you've talked about being able to play that at the reception, anything else, ideas like that where we're to kind of carry over that same emotion into next year?
Well, I think part of the strategy is to conceive of these as two separate, different events. If you have a small ceremony now, if you are eloping, like Chanelle was talking about, or if you're having a 30-person wedding, maximize it, right? Like, have that ceremony be even more personal. Bring in more readings that are important to you, or do all the things that you're legally able to do. Do your first dance, or whatever you can do to make that ceremony worthwhile and interesting and emotional for all the guests who are going to be there. Do that now. And I would say, as you were describing, archive that. Right? Like, get good video from it, get good audio from it, get good photos from it, because in some way you might want to reflect that ceremony at next year's reception. And you don't necessarily have to make any decisions now about what next August is going to be like, but you have it, right? And so I think at a minimum, you should get a audio recording, because just hearing that, and most people are going to get photos. I think even bad video is better than no video. But I think professional video, like something that was really well made. No, not well made. Good made? No. Best made. They should get a video that is best made. And then they have those tools for next year. And then I think we've been kind of talking about this a little bit, but then the next year, you've got to design that differently. You know that everybody there knows you just got married 9 months ago, or whatever the thing is going to be. So incorporate that and still have it be good.
I like the idea of adding things to the ceremony. The one that we just did, her brother was remote. They had some family members that were on Zoom, and they had picked readings, and then had her parents, did the readings at the thing, at the ceremony. And one of them, she's a huge royal family fan. She actually went to London and watched the royal wedding parade and all that. And one of the readings was, I guess, some poem or something that they had read at the royal wedding, right, to Harry and Meghan or whoever they are. But I don't follow any of that stuff. But but it was meaningful for that way. And I love that, because it was a little different than where you normally have 200 people and we're all kind of sitting there cramped and we're watching this thing and what's going on. It's just their family. You can let the ceremony breathe a little bit. Chanelle, to piggyback kind of off of the wonderful conversation we all had about the wedding officiant roundtable, about really maximizing your wedding ceremony. Other ideas like that, things you're working through this year, things that you're thinking about that couples can be thinking about in that way?
Well, there's a couple. So can I just take a step back real quick? This is not the first time in our society, in our history, that we've kind of gone through things like this. Obviously, people, like Alan said, people have gotten married and then had their second celebrations or their bigger celebrations at later times. Wartime, it happens a lot. My parents were married in Vietnam. My husband's parents were married during Vietnam. They had small courthouse weddings, and then they had their celebrations with their families later. And they did have those weddings. But so when I used to ask my mom, when did you and dad get married? Well, officially, we got married in January. We had our wedding later. So this is not the first time that our society has gone through things like this. So we just get to be more creative now and look at things a little bit differently. We have the benefit of technology that we didn't have then. One of my couples that got married in May, and I talked about this before, it ended up being a virtual wedding because they live in California. They had been planning to come up here to Washington for their big family celebration. They were flying in their family members to come celebrate over on the peninsula. And they had hand fasting. They had specific readings that they really wanted to have. And they had the ceremony and it was very meaningful to them. And they were incorporating their family in the hand fasting ceremony. It was taking place in the forest. It was going to be really, really beautiful. And then it had to change because nobody could travel at the time that they were getting married. They couldn't come up here. None of their family could be here. The state of California, the governor allowed virtual weddings to take place with the officiant wherever they wanted. So we just went ahead and did their official legal ceremony, but they still want to come back up here next year and do their ceremony. And they want to have that beautiful hand fasting ceremony that incorporates their family members. So that's really the one thing, is really just to think about, okay, why do you want to have this second ceremony? Is it because you want to celebrate with your family and your friends that couldn't participate or that couldn't participate in the same way? So just thinking about that, why do you want to have this second ceremony? Because you don't have to. Once you're married, you're married. You don't have to do anything else. So if you want to have it be meaningful for yourselves to be with them and have it be meaningful for them, think about how you want it to be meaningful. Do you want it to be this incredible party and this incredible celebration, which is wonderful? You don't have to do any more vows. Or do you want to be able to allow them to see a ceremony of something? So it's just really asking them to think about those things and what they feel in their hearts and go from there.
I totally agree. And I don't know if you do this for your ceremonies, Chanelle, but something that I love when officiants do is that they sort of do I don't know if it's a call to action necessarily with the folks that are at the wedding, but it's sort of cross-checking that all of the people that are here witnessing this ceremony, this moment, this vows, the kiss, they are your tribe to like fall back on if you're struggling personally or you're struggling in your relationship, that these people are holding you accountable to the vows that you're taking today, as well as like your support system. And so having, obviously having your close family members they're going to be probably the first people you turn to if you are struggling, but it's so much more impactful to have, those extra 50 people or all your friends and then your aunties and your uncles, like on top of that. I think that's just, you like feel the love and support a little bit more. And that's where I was saying earlier about compromising when you're paring down that guest list to a 10th of what you planned, maybe just that's another layer on what you were saying. I think you said that really well.
She kind of following up with Chanelle, talking about just the emotions, asking people questions. Everybody here, has obviously, worked with a lot of couples, with a lot of different emotions. I wanted to follow up with Sara first about that, as a planner, and hopefully there's a lot of, couples listening to this as well as other vendors, but, some emotions. What's it been like working with some of the couples, and especially the ones that are doing it this year and moving to next year? What's it, because you're kind of that front line, right? I mean, you're really involved in a lot of the decision-making, a lot of the questions, like, what do they want to do this year? What do they want to do next year? What's it been like kind of working through all that stuff with your couples?
It's been, I don't know. It's different with every couple, I guess is what I'm going to say. it's a really like a roller coaster, as I'm sure you can imagine. A lot of them, it all kind of started actually pretty early, March, and they're like, what do you think we should do? Like, this is freaking me out, like, grandma, and so it started out with a lot of like talking people back off the ledge, like, okay, we should have more information, May 1st. Let's like hold and not freak out until then if we can. And, then the other side of it is that I am the professional in it. I'm not feeling the wedding day emotion that they are. It's not my wedding. So I have to kind of dial that back, because I am feeling it for them, but I'm not feeling it as them, if that makes sense. So I want to stay sort of level-headed about it, but I also don't want to dismiss their concerns or their fears, because this is like something I've had a couple that they hired me 2 years ago for a 2020 wedding, and they had to push it to 2021. And I do think that a lot of like couples that I work with, at least, are already sort of like cohabitating, and they do many things as a married couple already. They're just not formally married. So that's what they're looking for in the wedding, is this big, like, official celebration. And so a lot of them are like, we're not even going to entertain a 2020 wedding because we want it all, or we want nothing because we're already living together. We're already doing all the things. So that's sort of the other side of it. They're either trying to figure out what to do, or just it's easier to just push it to 21. And I don't know, it's been a roller coaster. And I try to ask them if paring it down is too much settling, I guess, is sort of where I'm asking them. That's my ultimate question. Is it worth having a small ceremony, or is it worth it to just hold out for more and hope next year it's possible?
Yeah, it's tough, and I'm probably guilty of that too. I've been married, right? I've done everything. Alan was my DJ. I mean, we've so it's really easy for me to say, well, you don't worry about it. Just do the 10-person one and move on. I mean, I do. I think I'm really guilty of that, of saying, as someone that's gotten to do it, or I always remember that, a couple weeks before our wedding, I was filming weddings, and it was raining, really rained really bad, really tough day. And I'm just like, man, I hope it doesn't rain on my wedding day, because you want it, and then you've been through it. So it's easy I think for me to think for couples, well, just don't worry about it. Just do the small one and whatever. But like you said, it's that question of settling. Chanelle, we talked about this on the other one about, not settling, but, making the best of it. Follow up to any of this discussion from your point of view.
So like Sara said, there's been a lot of back and forth and trying to help couples step back from the ledge and the panicking. And one of the things that I've really tried to do as well is ask them, if you're given your option, do you want to get married on your current date? Is the date the most important? You chose it for a reason. Or is the bigger celebration the most important? So you tell me what's the most important, and we will work with that. And we will create something that's beautiful for whichever, or for both. So it really is about, finding out where they are first. And if they say that they want to get married on that date, they chose it for a specific reason. It's the anniversary of their getting together, or, they've waited so long, they don't want to wait anymore. It's really about creating something that's meaningful for that moment. But then, 6 months or a year from now, they're going to be in a totally different space. Whether COVID is still as big of an issue or not, in 6 months to a year, we will all be in a different space. And so if they're still wanting to have a bigger ceremony, or a ceremony that incorporates more of their family and friends, we create something new and meaningful for that time as well. So and I try really hard to not allow them to think of it as settling. So it may be that they've changed everything and they've had to completely pare down their guest list or eliminate their guest list altogether. I had a couple who went from having an East Coast wedding where their big families both were, to getting married on a dock in Chelan. And so I said to them, okay, that's a huge change. And if that's what you want to do, we will do it. How do we make it the best, most meaningful, most personal, most incredible elopement that you could ever imagine, so that it really is the two of you? And we spent time on that. And they actually said to me afterwards, this is how it was meant to be. You know, the other part would have been lovely and it would have been great, but after having been through this, now they had their first dance, they said this is how it was meant to be. Whether they feel like that next year, you know, but at least right at that moment. So it's capturing where they are in the moment, celebrating where they are in the moment, and then for next year or whenever, we'll do the same thing again. We'll capture where they are in the moment. We'll look at where everything is and then create something that's meaningful at that time. Yeah. That's where I aim to be.
No, and that's great.
Yeah,
and go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, picking a priority. I was just going to say, yeah, it's kind of like picking your priorities. Well, yeah, whatever's at the forefront for how you want it to look. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just so, and just to follow up where you're talking about, you know, where the couples are at, right, and where their mentality is, and it's going to be so different. I mean, I've even thought that even before these kind of the split ones, we're just pushing dates, right? You know, we were going to get married this year. We're going to get married. And, you know, I had told, you know, I'm sure Alan and Dorothy and stuff, I said, you know, it's one thing to flip your calendar a couple pages and say that's what it's going to be our new date. But I say, you know, 12 months is a really long time away. You know, it's a really long time, especially if you've been married. I know that Jennifer Vandeventure, she's been on the Get to Know Your Wedding Pro podcast. She's a planner. She commented on my post looking for guests for this in the Facebook group. She predicts there'll be a lot of baby announcements next year, you know, at these receptions because, you know, just people are going to be a different place. Alan, as someone that, you know, works with the receptions, you know, all this stuff, what do you think about that? You know, couples being in a totally different place next year and how to balance those two things from where they are now. And it makes sense of my illogical question.
I don't think it's an illogical question at all. For once, I think that the receptions are going to be different because they are reflecting a couple who's in a different space. But okay, start there. And if you know, I've actually done a game where guests will try to name the baby, you know, and then they pass it up, and then I read them or try to get the guest to vote on which one's the funniest one. So I think you can kind of incorporate that new space into the reception and have it be authentic to who they are then. But, you know, like Sara and Chanelle have said, there are so many different reasons that people pick the path that they are picking. People like a date. I had a couple who had been looking forward to 8/8/20 for, I think she said, more than 5 years. It was her grandparents' anniversary. And this was a couple who had been together a long time. So she was just kind of waiting for him to pull the trigger. And then 10 days before, the governor announces, you know what, we're going to halt all the weddings as of 8/6. And so you just have to deal with what you're dealt. And so I think for those couples who have made the decision that they want to get a ceremony done and be legally married and maybe start that path to parenthood or whatever else it is, great. But yeah, let's be real about that in 2021 and incorporate that if we can.
As someone that balances many wedding dates in my head, I do from time to time have to remind myself of when my own anniversary is, just because there's a lot of different dates going around in there, as I'm sure you know. Alan,
8/6.
Well, you did your wife's birthday, right? You did the same date, so you'll never forget, right?
I better not. Yes, my wife and I got married on her 30th birthday. So if I ever forget her birthday and our anniversary,
I'll be
You're
back.
toast.
I'm toast. Not even with butter, just like
Yeah, you're out.
Day
old
old
toast.
mildewy bread toast.
So if couples, so for anyone, listening still, hopefully, that has, done the mini wedding this year, the micro wedding, whatever, okay. So now we've got the date set for 2021, August 1st, whatever whatever the Saturdays are next year. What are some things that they should be thinking in mind, keeping in mind, asking themselves, asking their planner, asking their, officiant DJ? What are some things that they should be thinking about? Chanelle, let's start with you.
Some things that I just ask them to think about is what they are wanting to achieve with it. Is it just really to celebrate with their family, and they want to incorporate their family into it? Is it do they want something specific? Is there a certain ritual? Do they want to have their family participate in the ceremony or just watch? Really, just those kinds of different. What's the feel that they want to have for themselves and for their guests?
Sarah, what about you?
I agree. I think it's really important, like I said before, about this year, everybody's kind of got this tension, like COVID elephant in the room. And so I think it's important to sort of think about how we can sort of shake that off for 2021, if that's hopefully possible. So kind of pivoting back to the guest experience. And then I also am having people sort of think about if they maybe want to go up a level for certain things. They maybe want to take the money they were going to spend on the ceremony or have a little bit shorter rental time at the venue, and then they have that extra money to do one more thing, like maybe add a fancy videographer, or they want to do a signature cocktail little bar cart and have people experience like a bubble bar, or just something a little bit elevated from what they were initially planning, so they have a new aspect to this 2021 wedding that they're like jazzed about, that they can kind of bring other people into, just sort of to get the next level emotions stirred up for 2021.
Alan?
I think the first thing that a couple who is getting married next year needs to do is to identify the key vendor areas and make sure they have their team together. Yeah. 2021 is a nuts year, because of all the postponements and because people normally were going to get married then. So now is absolutely the best time to make sure that for those things you care about, you have your vendor team selected. And then honestly, I think take some time off. Like, wedding planning can be so stressful and so consuming, and we don't know. We don't know what July of 2021 is going to be like. And we don't know how many people are going to be able to come to your wedding. And there are so many unknowns right now that I think it's fine to just pause and observe the situation. And then as the spring comes along, pick it up. Start talking to your officiant and your planner and your other people who are important to you, and get some ideas about how things are coming back. We may be all the way back next summer to 250 people wedding, and great. But we may not. And you can't do anything about it. We won't know in December. We won't know in January. So take some time off and chill.
But definitely still be listening to wedding planning podcasts.
Oh, yes. You want to bookmark them and review them on Apple Podcast review places.
We'll get to that at the end. The other question I did have for you, Alan, and I forgot to ask this earlier, and this is and this is a serious question. So, as a DJ, as someone that puts a lot of thought into the emotions felt, your couples, a lot of planning, all that stuff. If we have a couple, got married this year, is just doing a reception next year, in your ideal world, what does that look like if you can put together their event, their timeline to, add have fancy toasts or whatever, play the audio, whatever. What does that look like in your ideal world for next year?
Well, I think it's hard to have a one size fits all. I would chat with the couple and I would start with that idea. What do you want to do about a ceremony? How do you want it to look? How do you want it to feel if you want to do it at all? Right. And so I think there's going to be some situations where couples aren't even in their dress and the formal attire altogether. They might just show up in something different, and that's great. That's okay. That sets a mood. As a DJ, I would try to extract from them what their values are and what are the things that they are trying to focus on. What feelings do they want to elicit from their guests, and then use that as sort of a starting point for that roadmap, and sort of figure out then what activities are we going to do, what are we going to skip. In all cases, I always want the reception to feel like that couple, and I want to give a lot of information about the couple's backstory and who are the people who are giving toasts and introduce the people in their wedding party. So I still want to make sure that we do some of that. And in the end, I want them to have this feeling of an amazing reunion with the people who they care about. And I'm a sucker for that. I still go to my high school reunions. I love it when I get together with people that I used to work with, even in different careers, because there's just this feeling that these are the people who have been through your life with you or shared some common experience. And so I want that couple to have that feeling when they walk into that reception. Oh my God, they're all here.
All about the feels.
I agree.
Good. Final thoughts, ideas before we go. I really appreciate, everyone coming on and sharing expertise today. Sara, what about you? Final words of wisdom, advice, thoughts?
I really liked what Alan said about just taking a little pause for now, because I think a lot of my couples are juggling, gosh, it's going to cost so much for next year. And what if COVID's still around? And just, it's really easy to get sort of down that black hole of worry. And so, yeah, I think just take a pause. Maybe just enjoy the holiday season with your close friends and family, and then save, Valentine's Day, you'll dive back into wedding planning. And I love the idea about getting your tribe together, ready to hit the ground running next year, and make it a good special event for yourselves and your partner and your family.
Chanelle, what about you?
I love the idea that Ellen has of really looking at it from a perspective of a reunion with people that are closest and most meaningful in your life. It really is all about the feelings. Weddings are in and of themselves. A marriage is just a legal rite of passage. Basically, it's the wedding is about the feelings and about the emotions and about sharing your love with each other, with the people that you love, and being surrounded by that. So I love the idea of really just focusing on the feeling that you want to capture, and absolutely taking a bit of a break, because we don't know what next year will look like. We can sort of put it out there. We want to have our second wedding, our reception, whatever it is. We want to have our next event next year to incorporate everybody, and we need to see how it's going to turn out and look as time gets closer. But why not just enjoy each moment as we can? We're coming into Halloween and Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's and Ramadan. I mean, all of these things that are meaningful to each of us in some different way. And so just celebrating that time as we can, and not focusing on the stress of wedding planning.
Alan, final thoughts?
Well, one thought is that there's no wrong path. And I think couples should explore all the options and figure out what they want to do and how we're navigating somewhat uncharted areas. Like, I agree with Chanelle that people have done this throughout history, but the scale of this cancellation and postponement and all, I just think is unprecedented. So I hope that all the couples just feel empowered to do what they want to do and what's right for them and what matches with their personalities. And then lean on your partner. Like, I feel like wedding planning is in some ways the first time where you are tested in a way that marriage tests you. When you're dating, a lot of it is, what movie do you want to go see? What restaurant? Where should we go on vacation? Just kind of those things. But then wedding planning is like, all right, do we get rid of your uncle? Do we get rid of my coworker? Or do we serve pasta with no sauce? I mean, the decisions get a little bit harder. And so I feel like that's an opportunity just in general for wedding planning for couples to start communicating and learn how to make decisions together. And the extent to which you can emotionally support each other during this time is going to be a great foundation to your marriage.
Well, we did it, guys. We saved the 2021 wedding. Good job. No, but I really appreciate all your guys' thoughts and expertise. Like I said, just being mindful of all these things, moving into next year. I just think it's so important just because it is unprecedented. It's a lot. And I think that, for the couple and the guest, I know it's a couple's day, but I do think that you want to really just be mindful of everybody, your family and your friends and kind of everybody's experiences coming to your wedding day. If everyone could please plug their, businesses one more time and websites and everything, we'll start with Alan and go around. And I really appreciate all you guys coming on.
Alan Chitlik, Puget Sound DJ. You can find me online on Facebook, wherever you find me.
Big on the IG, big on Instagram.
Big on Instagram.
Huge.
Lots of followers, Reed.
Huge.
Lots of followers.
Sarah, what about you?
Yeah, Sara Haverstraw, It's Your Day Events. We're on Instagram and itsyourdayevents.com. And we travel.
Chanelle, what about you?
Chanelle Carlin with Chanelle Carlin Weddings. And do weddings all over the Northwest. And you can find me on my website, ChanelleCarlin.com, Facebook, Chanelle Carlin Weddings, Pinterest, Chanelle Carlin Weddings, Instagram, Chanelle Carlin. Pretty much anywhere you look for me, you can probably find me.
Thank you. And I was I'm upset. I was going to plug this at the beginning and I always forget. I think this is episode number 19 now. And you would think, wow, you must have, 19 episodes of this one. You must have at least 19 reviews, right? And we don't. And so I know Alan has left a review, but for anyone that's still listening, ratethispodcast.com/wedding. Couldn't be easier. We got the custom URL, ratethispodcast.com/wedding. Leave a review for the podcast. I really appreciate if you're a vendor or a couple, that's had any sort of help at all, we would appreciate that. Thank you guys again so much. I really appreciate it. And I know some of these topics are a little more, nebulous, whatever. And I appreciate us trying to wrap our heads around it today. And I really appreciate all your guys' time.
Appreciate you, Reed. Thanks for asking
Reed.
the questions.
Thanks.
Yeah, so much fun. Thank you.